Hi there. Welcome to A Creative Affair. And you're here today with Brie and Len. And today we're talking about creative curiosity. Curiosity killed the cat, apparently, but that's a bit of a song, I think.
That sounds like a sad song.
It's terrible, isn't it?
Well, doesn't it sound like it? It sounds like it's all about risk taking, though, right?
What a terrible image to have in our minds to start with. But it is a beautiful song, and curiosity is an absolutely incredible thing. Are you a curious photographer, Brie? A curious artist? A curious creative?
Yes, I love how you changed that because Len doesn't say he's a photographer. He's like, I am an artist. So yes, I am all of those things, and I think my curiosity depends on my mood for the day or maybe how relaxed I am, maybe even like my subject matter. Ooh. So I find myself, and I'm thinking about my photography in particular, I find myself maybe even more curious when it's a place that I've visited before. So I feel like it feels relaxed and familiar. And sometimes when I go to a
Mm.
brand new place, I'm like a little, it's not, I don't feel stifled. I just feel like maybe I've got a bunch of thoughts. Like, I don't know if what's going on, like what's here, but I don't know. I think it's really dependent on the moment and the place and what I'm doing and all of those things. So how about you, Lynn? Are you a curious artist?
Oh, I hope I am, because it's a measure. It's a measure of my creativity in some senses, isn't it? That curiosity, and we've already talked about play, experimenting and going outside of the box, and doing other things, and seeing and exploring and making failures. Uh, they're a hallmark of an artist. Um, and you're joking about my keep saying I'm an artist, and that's because I make books, and I don't think of my prints as photographs. I do photogravure and printmaking and drawing and painting. So that's why it's a much broader brushstroke that I like to go with. But yes, I do think I am quite curious, and I've got a few examples of that I'd like to share. And I'm look over there to my left there, or right actually. I'm dyslexic there. And I'm looking at hundreds of books. And I don't just mean a handful, I mean a whole wall covered in books. And that is curiosity for me, that I'm interested to know and see what other people think are, are worthy of sharing and showing people. So my curiosity is about other people's um, work, how they think. Like so much about this podcast for us is exploring and trying to understand how people work as creatives, isn't it? And to get to the bottom to it, and we all hope for an extra little tidbit to come in and give us a little bit more motivation, like to become more curious, or to try something that gives us that little bit extra to explore. So yes, I think I'm quite a curious person, but I also suffer from doing boring work and making thousands of failures. So
There's Momo again in the background.
he is, yes.
It wouldn't be the
Guard dog
podcast
duties.
without Momo in the background. Yes, and I actually, while you were talking about our curiosity doing this podcast, about other artists and all kinds of things, I was also thinking that mutually we are curious about each other's brains and about each other's art and what each other thinks about things too, because we talk a lot, you know, off mic about all kinds of things. And it has actually been really fun for me to be able to ask questions and, share things back and forth. And I think that's such a wonderful thing about live conversations is you can ask a question and then more questions. Like I find that once I ask one question, more questions will come to me. And I think that all starts with like a little curious seed. So I'm, I'm like curious right now. And I just want to talk for just a second to our audience and say, and ask you, what do you think your level of curiosity is? And what question do you typically come into your work with, or when you're looking at other people's work, do you have a particular question that pops into your mind? Maybe this is also subconscious, but me and my work as a coach for creatives, I find it's really helpful to actually say those things out loud, because that solidifies things for us a little bit more, like, oh yes, I am curious because I like to ask this question. Like Len, when we go to when we go to like an art museum, like a gallery, right? So I can think of one moment in particular that I
Can
went
we
to
have an
again.
art date? Let's have an art date, Brie.
Okay. Do you want to fly to the US?
Oh yeah, I'm coming.
Someone send one of us round trip airfare. Okay.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Don't worry.
So, and then extra time, right? So, so, and Len and I both love to go to galleries. We love to be inspired. We've talked extensively about this, but I remember one moment. I actually was with my mom. We were down in San Antonio. I went to a new gallery, not a new gallery, just new for me. And I walked by a painting, and I'm trying to think of who it was by. Someone famous. I'm embarrassed that I don't know actually, because I've looked at a lot of work and now I just can't remember the artist. But I walked by and I thought, oh, there's something about that. There's something about that. And so I feel like that when that touches you, that's already that curious spark. And then I'm asking myself, what is it about this that is so interesting to me? And once I can answer that, then I start asking more questions, like, how does this compare to other works from this person? Or, you can go down a whole rabbit hole of questions that really is that creative curiosity. Does that happen to you, Len?
Oh, definitely. And it happened this week. Someone mentioned an artist, and I went, "Who?" And I type it into Google, and I go instantly to images, and I have this whole page of their images pop up on me, and my mouth just dropped, and this feeling ran over me, and it was Clean. Is it, or Jens Clean? Clean. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Someone's going to have to help me get my head around how to pronounce his name, but. Uh, his beautiful blue, international Klein blue, just went washed over me in this wave. And I was so mesmerized, I wanted to go and buy a tin of the paint and paint one of my walls that color. And then the whole performance art and what he was doing, and then looking at where he fits into history. And I'm like, why didn't I know about him? And my curiosity is about his work and also how that affects me, and then where should I take mine, and what inspiration does it give me as to where to go. And I spent the whole week totally immersed and exploring his work to try and understand, and to understand this reaction that I had,
It's
because
so
the
interesting.
curiosity was about not only his work, but oh, it moved me. And I need to follow that feeling, because if I don't follow it, I miss out on opportunities.
And I think sounds like that spark was, well, there's two catalysts. One was when you said, who? Instead of, okay, yeah, artist, great, right? So, who? That's a totally curious question. And then the other part that was actually before that was actually having conversations with other people, because you don't know what they're going to bring up. You don't,
Mm.
I don't know who's going to say something that completely enamors me when I find out about some artist or some technique or something out there that I'm like, what? who, why, right? So, we're back to all of those questions that are kind of like grade school questions: who, what, when, where, why. But those are the basis of those are the curiosity basics. And I think if we can start asking ourselves more of that, we're going to start learning, we're going to start enjoying other people's work and our own work more. How have you benefited from being a curious creative, Len?
I learn so much about who I am as a person through my art, and trying to understand myself and my art drives me along. I think that the two are so linked together that I want to be a better person. I want to understand the world better, and I want to understand art better, and I want to help other people understand art better, and so many ands in a row, help them understand their own art better. So curiosity uh, doesn't kill the cat, but actually motivates me to keep going and to keep exploring, and to have these incredible conversations. And I hope, Brie, that that enthusiasm spills into my art, because as being a curious person and e- exploring all these things and having these meaningful conversations. And you're totally right, Brie. When we first met, I instantly knew, and I had this feeling in my body, and it was like, what is it? Uh, you know, was it that I'm chatting to this lovely lady that I like to have an affair with, or was it um, this? Oh my God! There's a spark of someone that actually has an interest in art that I would really, really love to explore and talk about more with over time. And look what's happened in that time. That
I know.
curiosity is gone, hasn't? I'm not gone. It's gone somewhere amazing, and we're totally exploring that. And yeah,
Look at this beautiful affair that we
aren't we?
create.
We're having a wonderful affair.
Totally. Completely. Well, I think curiosity for me so I'll back up for a minute because I know exactly where I wanted to start with this comment. Is I like the older I get, I'm not old, by the way.
Not like me with
I
all my
do
grey
have a
hairs.
few gray hairs, but. So the older I become, the more I want to know things more in depth. I want to experience them in a richer, more deeper, I want to experience them all more deeply. And I think that's part of becoming more mature, that instead of just learning all kinds of surface things, I really want to dive deep. Or maybe that I've found something that I'm really interested in, and I'm I'm okay investing all the time and energy, emotional energy and mental energy to go deep. But the curiosity for me allows me to do that. It's super fulfilling for me on a personal level because I couldn't go like I know I won't go deep into this work unless I start asking like why. I feel like that why
Mm.
is such a good question. Like why? And then and I don't even know what the next questions would be because I think it's all subjective. But I just know that getting to that point where I start asking that question is such a huge deal. So maybe we can talk about that next. I don't know if you had another comment because you a minute ago, but
I wanted to know how this about this change, because you're describing a change over your life. Um, I remember it being 18 or something, and I first started working in personal development and education, and even starting to explore art. I was totally obsessed about this question of why and how, and I think I've been a curious person my whole life to improve my education. So I'm really interested to hear. And because the question I really want to know is what motivated and what changed, and how do we actually become more curious? And I don't know that because I was curious when I started, and so what changed that you shifted you in your life to be more curious? Is there actually something that happened, or was it just a growing, or you were a musician and you performed and very much visceral sort of things?
I'm thinking because I think I spent a lot of time trying things. And I think this is such a great thing to do is
Experimenting.
experiment, experience different things, trying things. And I don't even feel like I've gone that deep into my own musicianship, if you want to call it that. I feel like I'm more even emotionally mature now. And maybe this is partly due to all of the journey that I've gone on myself over the past 3 years to totally immerse myself in photography, in art, in creativity, and also getting to know and understand my own mind. And I think all of the combination of those things, like, has really allowed me to be okay diving deep into my own self and my own brain, because I think before, oh, this is very personal, but I think before all of this, I actually wasn't okay having deeper, like really deep emotions
Mm,
or deep
mm.
experiences.
And I'm guessing that also matched up with an interest in mentoring and coaching at the same time.
It did. And maybe partly it was, I spent a lot of, I don't know if you guys know anything about me, but I have,
We're learning.
yeah, you're learning right now. I have 4 kids. And they're actually all 18 and up. So I have a daughter that's 26 and then 3 boys. See how busy I was? 23, 21, and 18. And so the thing is I think partly I was really immersed. I homeschooled them for part of the time, and I was really immersed in what they were doing. And so that's partly, I don't think, and I don't like regret any of that. And I think it's okay that I didn't dive deep into who I was totally. Like, I knew who I was and I was trying things. But now that my kids are all older, I have more freedom to be able to do that. And by the way, having kids is so fun. I've experienced a lot of things because I was like trying to be curious for them. And so I've personally had a lot of experiences too with creative curiosity with my kids, just not on a deeper level, if that makes sense.
Oh, definitely, and I totally relate to that as a father, and the joy that my son brings me. We could spend months talking about that, um, and really, and this is where you started when we first started this episode, was that it depends, and there's a time and a place, and it changes and grows, and you were focused on doing particular things at different times, and now uh, there's a chance and a space in life, and probably also a comfort in life too, to be able to be more curious and to explore and do those sort of things. My other question really will be, or is, how do we become more curious? Like, how do we rewire ourselves, or um, take more notice of things? How do we become more curious? Do you have an answer to that, Brie?
Maybe. Well, my thought is, and I obviously think this is going to be different for everyone. But I think it's going to have to start with practice. And because I think becoming curious is that's why I said noticing what you're thinking, because this is all part of the practice of becoming curious. And I think initially it can start with putting yourself, like, if I was going into an art gallery, I was really going to practice becoming more curious, I would put myself in a mental space where that would be more possible. Like, and we've talked about all of the things that we talked about in our episode on preparing to create art all applies here. So I'll link that in the notes. And we're also going to link that artist that you talked about. Well, I do all the notes. I'll link a couple things. Anyway, but I think preparing our minds and having like being able to be relaxed, taking deep breaths, preparing our bodies to become open and receptive, because when we can ask a question and then try and find the answer, because I think that's part of the curiosity, right? Like we ask the question and then we don't just go, oh, I don't know the answer, bye, right? We want to try and find the answer. And maybe we don't find totally the answer, but then that search will spark more questions. And we have to be, I think we need to be in a space where we're relaxed and open. Otherwise, those things don't totally flow to us, because initially, if we're not super curious, and I know because I had to create this for myself. Like I don't have like a system that I did, but I remember reading this book called A More Beautiful Question. And I'm like, oh, questions are beautiful. Yes, I want to be asking them more often. This is actually how we learn, is by asking the questions and being curious. So if you want to learn something, you don't just like absorb information, you start asking the questions, right? So I
Mm.
think being in that initial space and then having one question that you could ask yourself maybe every time you go to practice, or depending on the scenario, like what question are you going to be asking on purpose at this time? I think that could be a kind of um, a good little practice to start with.
Mm. I was just thinking a good idea, which you could model from what we've been just our relationship, is find someone who is curious who asks lots of questions. And I was just thinking, if we went to an art gallery, one is, do we go to the same exhibition at the same time? So that might not be possible. But if when we
Right.
turn up there, do we wander around and actually stand in front of artworks and have conversations about them and actually ask questions and talk about it? Um, and those are actually quite clear choices to do. That let's ask questions and explore what's going on. And that's why I love art dates. It's so exciting to go to an art gallery with someone,
Totally.
and they will blow my mind away just by asking their questions and me trying to answer them and me asking them questions. And the curiosity for me, and it comes from following emotions, and like it's not only just thoughts, it's emotions as well. And it's the key to improving my art is actually learning to follow the emotional thread better. Like there's the intellectual thread, and I follow that, and I think mentally, I've been very good at that my whole life, but following the emotional thread was the one that I had to work on and become better at, and become more sensitive as a person to make my art that much better. So, uh, curious people can help you be more curious by asking questions and having conversations. And if we couldn't go to the art gallery together, we could both go to the same exhibition and then have coffee and talk about it like a
I
book
love it.
club. We could have a little art club.
I love that. I love that so much. And we're really talking a lot about visual arts, but this can also be so easily translated to music. Like I've taken a composition class and I'm like, what happens if I put this note here? Or what happens if I play this note like this? That's how you can become more curious. Just start asking questions of yourself. What happens if I do this when I play? Or what happens if someone else who's playing with me, or when I'm listening to this music? There's so even I'm creating all the questions right now, and I'm not even like in it, right? And it can translate to all kinds of things, but you have to know, you have to be a little bit familiar with your own genre and the creating, I think, to start, I don't even know. Do you have to be familiar? I don't think so, because that familiarity comes from just asking the questions initially, right?
And practice,
Totally. It's amazing.
experimentation.
It's amazing. I love this idea so much of creative curiosity, because this is really how we learn and we grow as artists. Is like
Mm.
this is like the asking the questions and looking to find the answers is such a fundamental to that. And that's why we love to do this podcast and ask, like, this whole podcast, by the way, is just that. It's this episode. It's just asking each other questions and having the conversation back and forth, because we're just curious, and it actually makes us more curious. I love that. How many times do we say curious in this episode, Len?
Well, titling the episode gives us permission to use the word over and over and keeps us
Absolutely.
focused on our conversations, which is a technique in creativity, isn't it? Is to try and hold on to a little bit of a thread between all these things. And for me, the other part of this question or this conversation really has to come down to the artworks themselves. Is that I find that really interesting artworks actually pose questions to me as a viewer, as the creator, and as the artwork, and that they stimulate conversation in my internally and propose, you know, thoughts, feelings, and explorations. And uh, I think being out and making art, um, the excitement of making it really creates a flow of them flowing out in an outpouring, I suppose. And that's curiosity as well, to see where it goes.
Absolutely. I think once we're in the total practice of asking questions, then it's all kind of subconscious, right? Like, I can point my camera at something and I'm not standing there going, I wonder what happens when I point my camera at this, right? It becomes a natural part of what you do. And
Mm.
that's such a beautiful thing, because that really, it can become seamless, and I think it makes the process so enjoyable. So, speaking of outflowing, Momo is so protecting your house right
His
now.
guard dog, yes, guard dog duties.
Momo is not guard dog looking at all.
We've got a huge sign on the gate saying "Warning, vicious dog," and he's 4.5 kilos of white
Oh my,
fluff, and
yes, he's a tiny white
he's so
fluff.
ballsy.
Why are the small dogs so much like that? It's so funny.
That small dog syndrome, that's for sure. Yes, small dog syndrome.
Oh my goodness. All right, we've gone off the rails. Okay. I think that's a great place to end. Len, I love being on this podcast with you and having these curious, creative conversations. And I just think this is such a beautiful thing. So, audience, we're going to invite you to think about where you are at in your creative curiosity. And we're going to invite you to do more of it. How can you become more curious and learn more? And I think that you'll really feel your art more deeply, on such a deeper level. It's such a wonderful, wonderful thing.
And for those people that are curious and would like to ask us a question, throw it out at us.
Yes.
We love having conversations, and we love having them taking us beyond us into other people. Of course, that's where we're going with guests, but why not ask us? Reach out and ask us a question, or throw us a thought that maybe comes your way from one of our discussions, or propose a new one.
I love it.
It's time to say goodbye then. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us in our creative affair. If you love the passion we bring to this creative content, please support the podcast by sharing with a friend, subscribing, and leaving us a review. Thanks. If you'd like to learn more about creative photography, visit lenmetcalf.com, where you could find links to Len's photography school, videos, and publications. He would love to invite you to sign up to his newsletter. To find out more about my work, including my photography and mentoring in my Creative Confidence group coaching program, visit creativemindscoach.com. See you next time.